Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Odyssey Recaps Below the Surface Edition. Today we are looking at Book 18, titled by Emily Wilson as Two Beggars. This book, or chapter, poses an interesting question about the nature of fate and how much agency or responsibility mortals have in the face of such a powerful force. We open the chapter on the image of a second beggar arriving at the palace of Odysseus. Odysseus himself, of course, is already inside, posing as a beggar, having been disguised by Athena as an elderly man dressed in rags so he can infiltrate the palace in preparation for an attack on the suitors. The second beggar, a man called Iris, is not a noble beggar like Odysseus. He isn't a secret king in disguise or noble in personality either. We are told he is notorious for greed, and he ate and drank nonstop and was weak with no capacity for fighting. As soon as he arrives at the palace, he tries to chase Odysseus away, cursing and threatening him with violence. Odysseus responds to his threats by telling him that this doorway can accommodate us both, and that Iris doesn't need to monopolize the wealth, that they're both homeless and can share the offcasts of the wealthy home and suitors. The disguised Odysseus also advises Iris not to rile him, because if he loses his temper, he says that he will crack your ribs and smash your face to a bloody pulp, without remorse, despite his age. Iris doesn't stop taunting and threatening him and mocks his age, and he is soon joined by Antinous, the dreadful suitor, who is delighted and encourages them to brawl for the suitor's entertainment. The suitors are similarly thrilled by the idea of a fight and gather around the pair of beggars. A special dinner of a fire-roasted goat stomach stuffed with fat and blood is promised to the victor, while the loser will face removal and banishment from the palace, along with whatever terrible injuries they incur during the fight. Odysseus, clever and deceptive at all times, plays up his apparent age and feebleness, and makes the suitors swear an oath that if somehow he manages to overcome Iris, none of them will step in and help defeat him. The suitors swear the oath, but before they can begin, Telemachus speaks. Now keep in mind that Telemachus swore to his father that he wouldn't interfere, no matter how badly he was being harmed. And remember the Telemachus we first encountered, the frightened and helpless boy from the opening chapters, who couldn't speak to the suitors without crying and was desperately trying to preserve what he could of his father's palace. The Telemachus that speaks now is very different from the boy we met in chapter 1. He tells his disguised father that if his brave spirit urges him to fight the usurping beggar, he doesn't need to worry about anyone breaking their oath and interfering. He says, "Anyone who strikes you will face a multitude. I am your host. Eurymachus and this Antinous are sensible, and they agree with me." He's no longer asking for the suitors to listen. He's telling them what they will do. Telemachus has finally claimed ownership of his home. He is their host and not their victim. The suitors all agree with Telemachus that they won't interfere, and the disguised Odysseus disrobes, ready for his fight. But as he removes his ragged clothing, his body is revealed to the suitors for the first time, and he has the body of a warrior, massive thighs and mighty shoulders, enormous chest and sturdy arms. Athena invisibly stands near Odysseus and stacks the deck in his favor by increasing his strength. The suitors are shocked, and Iris is suddenly frightened. He shakes as the slaves ready him for the fight. Antinous mocks Iris's fear, telling him that he would be better dead than so afraid of an old man, and that if he loses, Antinous will throw him on a ship and send him to King Iquitus, the lord of cruelty and pain, who will cut off his nose, ears, and genitals and give them to his dogs to eat. Iris is more frightened than ever, but it's too late to back out now, and so the match begins. Odysseus stands in the ring and debates how hard he should hit Iris. He doesn't want the suitors to know his true strength and skill, but when Iris hits Odysseus' shoulder, Odysseus breaks his jaw and knocks him out with one clean punch. Iris collapses, moaning, and the suitors cheer, and in an eerie moment of foreshadowing, the poem says they died of laughter. Odysseus grabs the unconscious Iris by the foot and drags him out of the palace, leaving him propped against a wall outside. He tells Iris not to bully visitors and beggars, and leaves him there and returns to the suitors to claim his prize. A suitor named Amphinomus kindly congratulates Odysseus on his win, and Odysseus speaks to him, telling him he has heard of his father and that the boy seems intelligent and he has some advice for him. Odysseus tells him, "Of all the creatures that live and breathe and creep on earth, we humans are weakest. When the gods bestow on us good fortune and our legs are spry and limber, we think that nothing can ever go wrong. But he says everything can be taken by the gods in an instant. The disguised Odysseus uses his fake backstory as an example, telling Amphinomus that he was once a wealthy man, but he committed many crimes of violence and abused his power, and in turning away from what is right, he angered the gods and was at their mercy. He says, I see how wickedly the suitors are behaving, and warns Amphinomus that Odysseus will return soon, and that he hopes the spirits guide Amphinomus home before he does, because when Odysseus confronts the suitors in this hall, there will be blood. This is such an interesting moment, because although the backstory Odysseus refers to here is fake, he has indeed committed great acts of violence. Though whether the gods view these as crimes or justified acts of war is debatable. But he has angered the gods and has been on the receiving end of their judgments. This warning is far more than simple foreshadowing. It contains an important message for the audience too, that violating the laws of the gods comes at a cost. But sadly for Amphinomus, the warning comes far too late, and herein lies what I think is the most interesting question of this chapter. How much agency do mortals really have in deciding their fate? Can terrible ends be avoided through good behavior, or is the deck stacked against us from the start, and we are simply playthings of the gods, doomed to act out a fate assigned to us from above? Amphinomus hears Odysseus' warning and is troubled. The text says he saw the dangers in his mind, but he was not fated to live. Athena had condemned him to be defeated by Telemachus with his strong spear. Amphinomus sat down on the same chair he sat on before. He has already been fated to die, and he cannot escape now. And by telling us that he will die on the point of Telemachus' spear, we, the audience, are invited to see briefly through the eyes of the gods and know the future. But how fair is this? When exactly was Amphinomus doomed? Was it when he violated the rules of guest friendship and took advantage of the hospitality of Odysseus' home, along with the other suitors? Or was this always his fate? The text uses the words fated and condemned, but those words have two very different connotations. Condemned implies judgment of a perceived fault, and in this case, Athena is the condemner. But why her? If the law he has broken is Xenia, Zeus's law, why is Athena the one punishing him? Unless, of course, as we have seen so many times before, the gods are capricious, and the true crime here is daring to harm the household and person of one of Athena's favorites. At this moment of indecision for Amphinomus, Athena arrives again, this time to ensure that no suitor leaves before Odysseus and Telemachus can enact their vengeance. But Athena's not done. After she stops Amphinomus from leaving, she gives Penelope an idea, to let the suitors see her so desire would open up inside them like a sail, and so her son and husband would respect her. And by respecting her, fight all the harder to claim her as theirs alone. Penelope calls for some of her slave girls to attend her for safety and propriety, and Athena provides some divine enhancements to make Penelope even more beautiful and powerful than she already is. The poem says that Athena changes Penelope, putting ambrosial beauty on her face, the same kind that Aphrodite uses, and also makes her shapelier and taller. The slave girls arrive to escort her downstairs, and Penelope says, "If only Artemis would bring me gentle death right now to end my misery. I waste my life in longing for my beloved husband." But Penelope's grief and misery don't matter. In this moment, she is a tool for Athena to use to achieve a specific outcome. Although it is worth noting that Penelope has held this home together for 20 years and has raised a son alone and kept the throne ready for Odysseus' return, seemingly without any divine assistance up to this point. We've been told over and over throughout this story that Penelope is wise and clever and good. So although in this moment Penelope has been turned into a beautiful prop for Athena and Odysseus' plans, we must remember that she also has her own desires to see the suitors dead, and she isn't without agency and tricks of her own. Divinely enhanced, Penelope descends the stairs and finds the suitors, who are captivated at the sight of her. The text reads, "The suitors weakened at the knees, desire bewitched them, and they longed to lie with her." Whatever thoughts any of them had about leaving are gone. The doors are closed, the trap is set. Penelope speaks to Telemachus, scolding him for allowing a guest to be insulted and abused in their home. Telemachus responds, saying, "Mother, I do not blame you for being angry. In my heart, I do know right and wrong. I used to be a child. I am not now, but I cannot even afford to think my own heart's thoughts. Those evil suitors keep distracting me, and I have no one on my side." Telemachus is now as eloquent and cunning in his speech as his parents. He's cleverly reassured her that he does know right from wrong, but that he's no longer a child, implying that he is acting as an adult with his own plans. Then reminds her that the suitors are distracting him and he is alone against them, a subtle reference to their precarious situation surrounded by armed warriors who vastly outnumber them. Of course, Penelope knows all these things, but I would argue that taken together, Telemachus is conveying to his mother that he has a plan. He goes on to tell her that the fight didn't go the way the suitors thought it would, and then he calls on the gods once again to punish the suitors for their behavior, and it says that they might be defeated just the same way that Iris was. One of the suitors interrupts them to tell Penelope how gorgeous she is, to which she carefully responds that the gods destroyed her beauty the day they took her husband away, and now she is weighed down by grief. Then she says something rather unexpected. She says, "At the time he left Ithaca, my husband grabbed my wrist, took my right hand, and said to me, 'Now, wife, I do not think we armored Greeks will all come home unharmed from Troy,' as the Trojans were rumored to be excellent fighters." He goes on to say, "Some god may bring me home, or I may be captured out there in Troy. I do not know. You must remember this. My parents need to be well cared for in our house, as much as now, or maybe more so, with me gone away. When our son's beard has grown, you must get married to any man you choose and leave your house." She carries on. "Those were my husband's words. The time has come. The night when I must marry is at hand. Terrible. I am cursed. Zeus took away my happiness." Now, I'd just like to pause here for a moment to consider this. To me, this one statement brings back the core of the story all the way back to the forefront. A family separated by war, desperate to be reunited. They've all struggled through impossible situations to make it here to this moment. Odysseus explicitly told to remarry, and as Telemachus is now 20, it's possible he grew a beard years before, and Penelope has been holding out against the express orders of her husband, all in the desperate hope that he will come back to them one day. The suitors have been there for 4 years, and even Telemachus has said that the time has come for her to choose a husband or have one chosen for her. But she is still held out against all odds and enormous pressure, a lone woman holding back an army of men. And this also adds another layer to Odysseus' constant questioning of her loyalty and whether she is remarried. He explicitly told her to, and so to remain loyal to him, she must disobey his final command to her. It's an impossible situation, and yet so far, she has threaded the needle perfectly, not turning the suitors away, but also not selecting one. Penelope is just as clever, just as strong, and just as brave as her heroic husband. But back to the text, Penelope ends her speech by telling the suitors that they haven't been courting her correctly, that instead of abusing her hospitality and home, they're supposed to be showering her with gifts, instead of choosing to eat what is not theirs and offer nothing back. And here we have another important moment buried in the middle of a scene. Finally, for the first time, Odysseus, Telemachus, and Penelope are all in the same room together, but none of them can enjoy this longed-for moment. Odysseus has been listening to his wife's speech, and while we aren't shown his reaction to her entrance, we do see his reaction to her words. While all the suitors are focused on her unearthly beauty, Odysseus is focused entirely on her cunning. The text reads, "Odysseus, who had endured so much, was happy she was secretly procuring presents and charming them with pretty words, while her mind moved elsewhere. He trusts that she is planning something the same way he is, even if she thinks that all she is doing is hopefully returning some of Telemachus' wasted wealth to him before she must remarry." And Aeneas responds to Penelope, telling her that they will give her gifts, but that they won't leave until she chooses one of them to marry. All the other suitors agree with him and send their serving men to fetch the gifts they brought for her. Penelope accepts the gifts and takes them all back upstairs with her, and the suitors go back to their party. The disguised Odysseus tells the slave girls to leave the suitors and go sit with Penelope and comfort her, saying that he will perform their chores for the suitors so that they might be with their queen. The slave girls giggle, and one in particular, a girl named Melantho, who has been sleeping with the suitor Eurymachus, begins to insult and taunt her disguised master, telling him that he must be crazy to speak like that in front of the crowd of suitors, and that if he isn't careful, one of them will beat him and kick him out, drenched in his own blood. Odysseus responds by telling her that he will tell Telemachus of her treachery, and that he will slice her limb from limb. The serving women tremble in fear and scatter, and Odysseus takes over lighting the braziers and continues to form his plans to kill the suitors. Athena re-enters the story. The text reads, Athena wanted pain to sink deep down inside Odysseus. She made the suitors keep taunting him. Eurymachus was jeering to make the others laugh. Being the favorite of a god is not an easy path to walk, and Athena uses pain as a flint to sharpen Odysseus' desire for revenge. This is another moment where the agency of mortals is questioned. Athena makes the suitors taunt Odysseus, specifically to make him angrier and make his revenge bloodier and more spectacular. And it works. The suitors mock Odysseus and they exchange barbs, but Odysseus ends by saying, "You act aggressive, and you think you are big, strong men, but because you spend your time among this tiny group of low-born louts. But if Odysseus appeared, the doors, which are quite wide, would start to seem too narrow as you are struggling to get away." The suitors miss the warning, and Eurymachus tells Odysseus that he will pay for showing off in front of them, that he's the one who should be scared. And then he hurls a footstool at Odysseus, which misses him and hits a serving boy, severely injuring him. The suitors complain to each other about the rude beggars spoiling their feast and their evening, but Telemachus interrupts. And once again, he's claiming his role as the head of the household. Telemachus tells him, "This is insanity. Perhaps you dine too well, or else some god is stirring you. Now you have finished dinner. Go home and sleep. Whenever you are ready, I will not force you out." The suitors are surprised at his confidence, and one of the suitors says that what Telemachus says is fair, that they shouldn't abuse strangers or the slaves who serve the house, and that they should end their evening and go home, leaving Telemachus to care for the stranger, as, after all, the beggar came to his house. The rest of the suitors agree, and they pour libations to the gods, and then finally the suitors depart for the night. And that is where the chapter ends. The tension is getting ratcheted up more and more with every chapter. Join me next time for chapter 19.